Hey everyone, Zishan here with Royal Page Signature. Today is April the 1st. I hope you and your families are well and keeping safe. Given that it is April 1st, normally this is when rent is due. If you are a landlord or a tenant, you're going to want to watch this video in its entirety because there's a lot going on in the world of the landlord-tenant relationship and the dynamics sort of these situations. In this video, I want to talk to you about four things. One, I want to talk to you about the current state of the Landlord-Tenant Board. Two, I'm going to talk to you about the government stance on rent and evictions. Three, I'm going to give you some tips if you're a landlord on what you can do and what you might want to consider doing. And four, if you're a tenant, what should you be doing or what can you do in these tough times? So firstly, what's going on with the Landlord-Tenant Board? Well, the Landlord-Tenant Board has actually been shut down since March 19th. They are no legal proceedings are taking place. They've halted everything. They're not looking at new court cases. They've shut down and they're not coming back until June. They've also put a stop order on all the evictions. So anything that was in progress has stopped as well. Sheriffs are not going out and executing the evictions. So everybody's staying put right now. Given that the courts are not going to be back until June at the earliest, there's normally a 3-month wait time to get in front of the Landlord-Tenant Board as it is. So if you filed something today, best case, you're getting your hearing in September. So things are going to be interesting as we go forward, and I can assure you that when the Landlord-Tenant Board reopens, there's going to be a flood of cases given everything that's going on with the coronavirus and what's happening out there. What's the government stance? Well, the government has, Premier Ford and Mayor Tory, they've come out and said, firstly, rent is due on the 1st of the month, period. However, if you cannot pay your rent, do not pay your rent. And that's sort of a statement it's not complete, because they're not telling you or telling anybody what their plan is to cover the landlord side of things. You know, there's no clear direction on whether it's, if you can't pay your rent, don't pay your rent and file, or landlords can file for some sort of relief. They haven't said that part of the statement. They've just sort of said, if you can't pay your rent, don't pay your rent. And some people are certainly going to take advantage of this, and they're going to use it as an excuse not to pay rent, even if they can, which is unfortunate, especially if you're the landlord in that case. Both parties, again, both municipal and provincial, need to be a little bit more clear on the direction that they're going to be taking going forward. What's going on, or what can you do if you're a landlord? Number one, if a tenant comes to you and says they can't pay your rent, I suggest that the best thing to do is have a conversation with that tenant and try to be accommodating. They may genuinely be going through something right now. They may be sick, they may have lost their job, they may be working reduced hours, they may genuinely not be able to pay their rent on time. You should ask for documentation to confirm if they have lost their job or if they are working reduced hours. I highly recommend not to be aggressive. If you get people's backs up against the wall, or you kind of get people on defense, it's going to be more of a problem for you, and you likely will never see the money that you're owed. So try and take a softer approach in this case. There was a letter that Harry Fine, who was an adjudicator for the Landlord-Tenant Board for 13 years. He's a top-notch paralegal. Shout out to Harry Fine. Shout out to the REC team, Real Estate Center Canada, for putting this together in conjunction with Harry Fine. But if you want a copy of this letter that Harry Fine has drafted, please either email me or leave a comment below or DM me, depending on which platform you're seeing this on, and I'll get you that letter. But it basically talks about what tenants should be doing, about entry into the unit for repairs, about how, you know, maybe you shouldn't be, or try to not cause any further damage, don't flush wipes down the toilets, that sort of thing. And it also talks about rent and what are possible solutions or ways to work around any rent issues. The next thing you should do if your tenant is not paying the rent is remind them that even though the government says that you're not going to get evicted, eventually rent is going to have to be paid. So they need to understand that at a certain point, they're going to have to pay you this money. You can offer up a payment plan if need be, but be very careful about how you do this. If you're a landlord, do not use the terms rent reduction or rent discount, because Ontario has some very fine laws about how this works. If you offer a rent discount or a rent reduction, it could be the new legal rent. So when you're doing this, or if you have to do this, make sure you use the term rent deferment, or you're deferring rent. Don't say discount, don't say reduction. The term you want to use is defer, rent deferral, okay? Because you could get yourself into some trouble when this is all over. The next thing you want to do is remind them, or maybe inform your tenants of some of the programs that might be available to them. They may not know. They may not know about the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit. They may not know about the extra childcare benefits that are out there. They may not know about the deferral, or sort of the pushing back of the income tax filing. They may not know what's out there for them. So maybe try and be a guide for them and try and help them as much as you can to show them what government assistance programs are available for them. The next thing you want to do is file the N4, which is the notice to end a tenancy for non-payment of rent. Now, you got to be very clear. You only want to do this one after you've talked to your tenant, and you want to be very clear about the fact that you're not trying to evict them and you don't want to evict them. Nobody wants an eviction. Landlords don't want evictions. Tenants don't want to be evicted. It's not a nice thing. But the only reason you're filling this out is because if the worst case happens, and rent isn't being paid for 6 months or whatever, you're gonna need to file with the landlord tenant board, and doing it now just kind of saves your spot in line for what will likely be a very busy period for them. So just remind them you're not trying to evict them, you just want to save your spot in line. If 14 days passes and they still haven't paid their rent, make sure you file the L1, which is the application to evict. And again, you're just doing this just in case, it's sort of a worst case scenario planning, to make sure that you have a spot in line when the landlord tenant board reopens. If you're a tenant, what can you do? Firstly, if you can pay your rent, then you should pay your rent. If you can't pay your rent, then talk to your landlord and have a meaningful conversation about a reasonable solution that will work for both parties as best as possible. And if you think that, you're going to get a mortgage deferral, I don't have to pay my rent, please understand that mortgage deferrals, they're not for everyone. Mortgage relief isn't for everyone. Not all banks are offering it. Not all people will qualify. Not all properties will qualify. And if they do qualify, the interest on the mortgage is still payable. So the landlord is still on the hook for the interest that accrues during the 6-month deferral period. Again, these are unprecedented times. There's a lot going on. And I wanted to kind of get this out there because, it is the first of the month and a lot of people are going to have issues collecting rent or paying rent. And I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, as always, please don't hesitate to ask. Either comment below, send me an email, or call me 416-450-3163. Hope you guys are safe, and I hope your families are safe, and I hope this was helpful for you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch.